Hey there, folks. Episode 4 of The Pod Couple. At some point, I suppose we should stop mentioning the number of the episode at the top, but I don't think we're there yet.
Well, once we get past the point where we can count, I got at least one more finger on this hand. So
that is your host, Steve Hubbs. I am also your host, Kyle Gherkin, and you're listening to The Pod Couple. Make sure you subscribe to us either via iTunes, Stitcher, or Blueberry. And follow us on Twitter at The Pod Couple. That's PODD. 2 Ds in pod.
Double Ds.
Well, I am a fan of double Ds.
So it is Batman v Super Tuesday. It's a busy week. Gotham returned. But we have some other television to talk about.
Are you watching Gotham?
I watched it when it came back last night, and I woke up today with a stomach ache, so that should tell you all you need to know about Gotham. That's essentially it.
You feel like there's a direct line between Gotham and your stomach ache?
I'm not saying anything for sure, but the evidence adds up, man.
All right. Well, there are some very good shows on as well. We're going to talk about a couple of them here. I'm going to start with HBO's Togetherness. Togetherness is a show that is absolutely in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
It is really, I mean, we talk about 30-somethings struggling with,
all of life's precarious pitfalls.
Yeah, infidelities, creeping ennui. I mean, really, that's you're talking my language there. Yeah, anyway, the first 2 episodes are out now of that. The second one aired last night. We're recording this on, actually, Sunday night. We're recording this on a Tuesday, Super Tuesday, as you mentioned, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, so the first 2 episodes are out, and I love this show. I mean, it was really one of my favorite shows last year that came out, and I love the Duplass brothers' sensibility, and like I said, it really works for me. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, it's great. It's hard to talk about Togetherness and not talk about girls, because I think that they're linked in sort of the way they try to tell their stories. You see a lot of the same themes running through girls, but it's handled so much better. I prefer Togetherness to girls by a wide margin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that girls is we can obviously we'll talk about that some as we go forward. It's a much more mature show at this point. I think they're going into season 5. Is that the season that we're on? I
believe
now?
5 or 6.
Yeah. So they have different challenges, obviously, with the show of that age, and Togetherness is much newer and fresher. But I think for Togetherness, part of the thing is for me is that it feels much more relevant to where I'm at in my life. These are characters in their 30s, characters with families, kids, situations that fit more where I'm at, as opposed to girls, where you're talking about people still in their early, now I suppose mid-20s, but and dealing with the sort of immaturities of that level, which I can remember to a certain degree, but of course I had kids.
You were never that immature though. You were mature from birth.
Well, I also had kids when I was 21 years old.
Okay, so that was a bit immature.
So yeah, but it left the amount of time I had to just really fuck around was limited as a result of that, and I think that's something that.
It's all right, buddy. I'm doing enough fucking around for both of us.
Well, exactly. That's why we're the pod couple. You got to even each other out with
Well, I'm thinking specifically about Togetherness when I try to draw that comparison to girls, which we will talk about more. I'm thinking of Amanda Peet's character. I love this character, and it's such a great example of where I think girls, Hannah's character, goes awry, which is Amanda Peet's character is deeply flawed. She's got a lot of problems, and you pull for her and you root for her anyway. I mean, she's just an absolute pleasure to watch every time she's on the screen.
Yeah, I think that this feels to me like the role that Amanda Peet was waiting for, her whole career. She keeps getting cast as like the pretty girl or maybe comic relief or different things, and it's like, this allows her to really show what she's capable of as an actress, and it does make you realize how many actors probably never get that role in their career. You know, they whether they're a character actor or they get pigeonholed into some sort of token slot where some character they played early on in their career, and then they just keep getting cast that way as a typecasting type of situation. But yeah, I mean, she's tremendous in this show, and I agree, it's a really extremely well written character, as really are all the four main characters, extremely well written, which is part of the strength of the show.
Yeah, and strong performances all around.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think that the one of the things I love about the show is just the delicious tension that they create. They have those scenes where you're almost like squeezing your own thigh, going, "Oh my God, what is gonna happen?" like, and they keep drawing it out. You know, one of the scenes that there's a few in these first couple episodes, but the first one that comes to mind is that ice bucket scene in the first episode, the end of the first episode of season 2, where Alex is going to get the ice bucket from the bucket, and then he gets cornered by Amanda Pete's character Tina, and the way that scene just kind of keeps going, and you expect that Tina's gonna say something to him, which obviously she's now pining after him now that she can't have him and that he's a little bit of a big shot, and especially even when he admits that she broke his heart, but yet it just keeps building and you never quite get there, and you're on the edge of your seat, and I love that kind of construction for any scene. And so, and this show's really good at that. They do that in several other scenes as well.
Yeah, it's a fairly predictable sort of relationship. The show isn't breaking any new ground, but it definitely, as with all the other Duplass brothers projects, it does fall into that groove of just dealing with normal problems, everyday people's problems, in a often hilarious and often poignant way.
Yeah, absolutely. I also really enjoyed Melanie Linsky's performance, which I mean I've been enjoying it throughout the whole show. But she has a couple of moments in that first episode. There's the moment where he's proposing to her, or re-proposing to her, her husband Brett, basically trying to reestablish the marriage, and she's obviously got all this guilt from the cheating that she did, and she wants to say something, but she can't in that moment, and just the whole struggle that's in her face. It's like there's no words, it's just all in her face, and it's it's tremendous.
Yeah, she's a phenomenal actress. She's been great since Heavenly Creatures, and is Australian, I think.
Oh, really?
I believe so. Where we're huge.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I'm sure.
Good job again, Australia.
I'm sure she listens to this podcast then.
Killing it. Who doesn't? Our numbers are growing by the tens. Do you feel like anything is remarkably different first 2 episodes in of this second season from last season? Does it feels like, and I'm having a hard time recalling, but it feels like they may have even stepped up the production quality, like the actual direction of the show feels like it's in a pretty good groove.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't.
A couple of long takes.
Yeah, I didn't notice anything in particular that stood out to me versus last season. Of course, it's been a long time since I thought last season. It's been a year. But I do think that they are very comfortable with these characters at this point, and it feels like they're able to really build on everything they did in the first season, and just pick up right where they left off, which is nice. There's no sense that they have to. Sometimes at the beginning of a new season, it's almost like, okay, well now we got to establish everything that's going to happen this season and do all this table setting, and there's really not any of that going on here. It's like the story just picks up right where we left off in episode or in season 1.
Do you find that you're having sympathy for Peter Gallagher's character? That was a surprising thing to me, was that they're sort of painting him as perhaps he's realizing what's going on, and he may get cuckolded somewhere down the line, and he's like a super rich, handsome, successful guy, and I feel kind of bad for him.
Although my wife was not a big fan of that mustache.
Yeah, well, come on, he pulls it off. He's got a Peter Gallagher better mustache than regular Gallagher.
Yeah, a little bit of an Earl Flynn thing going on there. Yeah. I'm waiting. I was waiting for him to burst open some watermelons, but it didn't happen in any of these episodes. Maybe we've got something coming later.
Yeah.
Uh,
Spoilers.
that does seem like something that the Duplass brothers would do. Uh, although speaking of, obviously we've been praising this show a lot, and it certainly deserves it. One thing that didn't work that great for me in the first episode was the whole gift mishap plot line. With even though I think Amanda Peet played the hell out of it, the whole thing just felt a little too sitcom-y.
Yeah.
It didn't feel quite. It felt a lot out of place for this show.
Yeah, it definitely is something that's been done to death. The missed gift, the whole idea of overcompensating with the gift, and that's something we've seen 100 times. So I'm in agreement with you there.
Is there anything else that stood out as not totally working for you?
No, I don't think so. I think everything's across the board. I just really enjoy this show.
Yeah. One thing I think we'd be remiss if we did not mention was a bit of worlds colliding here in episode 2, as at the party scene they were playing some Tame Impala
Oh yeah,
on the stereo system, and I was like, hey, I recognize that song because I've been learning about modern music on this very podcast.
that's pretty impressive. That's awesome.
So that was fun to see. And then anyway,
Look at you. You can hang out with the Duplass brothers now. You'd have something to talk about.
I know. They're like, hey, nice job with the Tame Impala
Foot in
guys.
the door.
They'd be like, oh wow, you know Tame Impala? Amazing.
Yeah.
So the party scene in general was was great. I loved the way the whole thing, again, talking about tension, just building that tension and the dynamics between the characters, and something's going to explode, but it's just a matter of when. It's the sort of the classic Alfred Hitchcock idea of there's a bomb under the table, but you don't know when it's going to go off, and that's what that whole party scene really was.
Plus, Amanda Peet just getting drunker as the night goes on it's just great watching her again in that position. The tension with that girl, the new girl, she's perfectly cast too, because she's pretty, but I don't care for her. She's right where she should be in terms of what they want us, the audience, to feel.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts so far on Togetherness before we move on to Girls?
Seems like they came back swinging. I think that maybe, I don't know how Togetherness does ratings wise. I don't know if it's been lauded critically, but it is a great show. More people should be watching it.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I don't think it does great in the ratings at this point, but it also doesn't seem like an inordinately expensive show to make. So I would guess that as long as it's getting critical buzz, HBO will keep it on the air. I think they like being in business with certain types of people, and I think probably the Duplass brothers are like, just being in business with the Duplass brothers is maybe enough for them, just like they like being in business with David Simon, and even though his last several projects were not gangbusters in the ratings by any means. I mean, for that matter, neither was The Wire. It more became beloved and after the fact, but yeah.
And the Duplass brothers aren't going to turn around and argue over $5 million to get a pilot made. 95 versus 100 million.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So Girls is a show that I don't think we've ever talked about, actually, even off the air. So that since it is a more mature show, like I said, I believe this is season 5. I'm curious about your general thoughts about the show before we talk about this season in particular, or the first 2 episodes of this season.
My general thoughts about the show are that I like it. I do enjoy watching Girls. I've watched it from the beginning and always been a fan. It's getting harder to stay a fan of the show.
That's, I want you to expound on that a little bit, but I wonder does it have anything to do with some of the criticism I've seen from the show? There's been a lot of criticism. It feels like a lot of backlash in general over the last several seasons, and one of the big attacks on it is that these characters are so selfish and they're so immature that they're not likable, and people don't relate to them or whatever. And I always found that to be sort of an odd critique. Not that not that they're not selfish and immature, but as if characters have to be heroic in order to be interesting. So I don't know if that.
Yeah, that's definitely not the case. Characters having to be heroic. I love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and that's a show about 5 sociopaths.
Right.
You know, so it's that in and of itself is fine. The problem that I have with girls is that Hannah and Marnie's characters have become insufferable. I mean, it's one thing to be selfish. It's one thing to be self-aggrandizing. But it's another to focus so heavily on those storylines. I did not like last season at all when Hannah got separated from the rest of the group and went off to school on her own. It seems like, how is she getting away with constantly behaving this way? I've suspended my disbelief, I think, with her in too long. Like, how does she just say some random bullshit to the principal at her job and then walk out and still have a job? It seems like, oh man, like, why hasn't anyone kicked her in the teeth yet?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's something that that's actually one of the things that I wrote down in my notes, was that to talk about how that's the one part of the show that feels sort of divorced from reality. I mean, in a way
more so, yeah,
the way that's hard to swallow, because it almost feels like it's part of a different show. Like you'll see some crazy, like some wacky thing like that happen on New Girl or something like that, but New Girl is clearly happening in a universe that's a little bit removed from our own, where more wackiness can ensue than is realistic. But Girls tends to be more grounded as overall. And so even if some of the behavior might be a little exaggerated in terms of its inappropriateness, the consequences exist to a degree that is just not present at all in the whole teaching storyline. I mean, it started in last season where Hannah became a teacher, basically giving up on her writing more or less, and became a substitute teacher, and is carried through this season where she acts in a way that would get anybody fired basically within 5 minutes.
Yeah, she's just like, I mean, short of just masturbating in front of her class, like,
which
what does she have to do?
Which I would not be surprised to see.
She would do
in
it and say
episode 3.
she's teaching women how to be liberated or something. And this is nothing this is not a personal attack on Lena Dunham, who I think is a real talent, and I know that it's kind of in vogue to hate her. She's a critical darling, but a lot of people, you can't have a conversation about Lena Dunham on the internet without people just leveling horrible accusations at her or just saying ugly things in general. And it's not against her. I just feel like the show's been on at this point, and maybe they're not sure what to do with the characters, and maybe as it's gotten older, they've sort of run out of ideas for a lot of these people. Marnie hasn't been interesting in a million years. I don't get the relationship with the new guy. I can't remember his name, but he was on the American Office. But her new boyfriend is the Adam replacement.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. I mean, what does he see in her? They haven't given me anything.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. Yeah, she's been pretty terrible person from anything he's seen. And I suppose a lot of what we've seen. I don't know. For me, I think that the Hannah character is, even though she makes a lot of terrible decisions and is often not somebody that somebody that's a little hard to like, I still do find myself interested in her, and I still think that a lot of the things that she says or does end up being funny. Marnie, on the other hand, is a tough one. She's a character where, I think you put your finger on it earlier when you said insufferable, and I mean, I don't think that Dunham is unaware of that when she's writing the character. I mean, I get the impression that she knows that, but they've steered so hard into that I just don't know where else there is to go with Marnie, and it makes her problematic and hard to stick into storylines.
And maybe that's Dunham's strategy with Hannah. Maybe she's trying to make Hannah worse so people like Marnie more, because she feels bad that she wrote Allison Williams into that corner. it's difficult to like either of them. But I must say, it's a ballsy choice. Because Lena Dunham, as the creative force behind the show, the director, and as the writer, she could make her character awesome.
Right.
You know? She could do something beyond taking her clothes off at the drop of a hat. That's like a novel trick, you know? And she still gets a good joke out of it in the episode where the guy's telling her to cover up her bush.
Right.
Like, that's a solid joke, and there's some good ones, and Hannah has those zingers from time to time. But the fact that she is willing to portray herself, presumably based on some real life experiences, in a pretty ugly way, even though I don't like the character Hannah all that much, I have to respect Lena Dunham for going so raw with it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think she's very talented, as you said, and I think that she's a very good writer. I mean, she wrote both these episodes, and there's, for whatever problems you may have with some of the characters, and there's some great lines in these episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Some really
the E. Cummings.
Yeah, the E. Cummings one was good. Another one of my favorites was when Desi is swimming in the pool and shouts out to the heavens, "I'm a garbage person."
Yeah. Does it make me a misogynist that when I watch the show Girls, my favorite parts are all the dudes?
Yeah, probably, but I'm in the same boat. So
what are you gonna do? Adam Driver's so fucking good.
Yeah,
man.
I mean that's a big part of it, and that's something that one of the things I really noted watching these two episodes back to back. Was that the second episode was much stronger than the first, and I think that a big part of that was that there was a significant chunk which focused on Adam Driver and his character Adam, and then also, of course, another big chunk focused on Hannah's dad, and so and those are characters, particularly Hannah's dad, who we don't see a lot of, so we aren't sick of maybe in the way that we are. I know, and also Elijah, who's another character we don't spend a lot of time with, so. And for that matter, it was notable that there was no Marnie at all.
Yeah.
And no Shosh. So
you think they're going to do some time jumping this season? That's what I'm wondering. Because they sort of glossed over the fact that Shoshana's character was in Japan.
Yes.
And suddenly, after the wedding, it makes sense that Marnie will have disappeared. But are we going to get a separate story? I don't know. I haven't seen any previews of what's to come. But I'm feeling like there might be some time shuffling going on this season. It's just a hunch.
Yeah, you could be right. I mean, and maybe some of that is an attempt to figure out what to do with a problematic character like Marnie by sort of writing her off under her honeymoon, and maybe if she comes back, they can have some kind of fresh storyline for her. Personally, I wish they'd go back to the Ray and Marnie hate fucking storyline. That was my.
It's pretty solid.
Probably my favorite Marnie storyline of the show so far, but unfortunately that seems to have gone away. They even teased a little bit of a chance of it still happening in that first episode, but of course Ray, as usual, wound up on the shit end of the stick.
Yeah,
so
good guy. You know what? That's another thing about the second episode, which I stuck in my craw, was the scene where he goes to the rival coffee shop, and it seems like Girls is a show about equal opportunities. It's an exploration of feminism without hanging a lampshade on it. But then you have this really ill-conceived comedy bit with the transgender person and the gentleman behind the counter, and Ray seemingly out of touch. And I'm just not sure where that joke was aimed, but it feels like it's a joke for a different show. It doesn't feel like that's a Girls joke.
Yeah, I thought that maybe there was some meta stuff going on there with Hannah maybe commenting on some of the criticism from the show, not Hannah, but Lena Dunham commenting on some of the criticism the show has gotten, but I'm not.
Could be. It just seems like it's making fun of its own audience, which I guess is fine, done in the right way, but it didn't land for me at all, and it made Ray seem, I don't know, kind of lame.
Yeah, I mean, which is too bad because he's another one of the
he's great,
the fun characters in the show, who also got a lot of screen time in that episode. So, so yeah, so like I said, I think it shows you how much just pivoting the focus of the characters from the first episode to the second episode can change the strength of that show. And it'll be interesting to see what they do going forward with that, if they're going to focus more on some of these characters that are more interesting, or are just less developed. Because, like I said, I mean, there's just so much more room to grow with people like Elijah and Hannah's father and whatnot. I did one line I did really like as well from Marnie, which I think also may be a little bit of a meta comment from the show, but sort of encapsulated Marnie's insufferableness, was when she's talking to the makeup art, the beautician, yeah. And she says, yeah, the theme, I want a theme that nods to my cultural heritage, which is white Christian woman.
Yeah, that was pretty great. That was good.
So,
and when she's like, okay, well, just before you do anything final, just come and check with me. She's like, I'm really laid back, really hands off, but before you do anything at all, make sure you get my approval.
Yeah. I suppose Marnie as Bridezilla was too predictable of a storyline, but there were still some fun moments.
It's true to the character,
right? A couple other lines that I really enjoyed was Hannah's when she's talking to her father about the guy that he slept with and how she can't trust him. She's like, he's a boot dealer.
Yeah.
As if boot dealers are generally known to be unscrupulous characters.
Right.
So matter of fact.
Well, if he was a boot maker or a cobbler, then we know from Better Call Saul that you can't trust cobblers.
Is this something from the most recent episode?
Well, the cobbler was when he sat in the pie and he said it was a cobbler. Remember Better Call Saul?
Is this from the first season?
Yeah, no, from the most recent episode.
Oh, I have not yet seen it. So.
Oh shit! Really?
Thanks for spoiling the cobbler joke.
Why aren't you caught up on Better Call Saul, man? That's not on me.
I'm trying to watch a lot of things for this podcast, Steve.
Wow.
So yeah, well, I will definitely be catching up with Better Call Saul. But
the second episode is called Cobbler, just so you know.
Okay. And he sits in a pie at some point, apparently. So that was a good one. Another fun moment in the scene with Hannah and Keith, her father's hookup, internet hookup found on gay.com. Which was a nice touch. Yeah. But was when she has that awkward interaction with him, and then she's getting ready to leave, and then she hugs him. Because it just feels like, what else do I do here?
Yeah.
Like, what do I do with this person? And that it has that incredibly awkward hug, which cracked me up. So yeah, there were definitely some funny moments in this, especially in the second episode here.
Some funny moments, to be sure. I just feel like Girls is becoming that friend that stays too long at the party. Where they are a fun time for a while, but eventually you get sick of their shit. I should know, I am that friend. So that's kind of the relationship we're entering. But it's not, it's still a great show. And you could be watching a lot worse television, and I do.
So you will still continue to watch the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's not even, the worst show that starts with G. That's Gotham. Okay. I'm still talking about Gotham. Gotham's the worst.
Can't let go of Gotham. Yeah, no, I mean, Girls is always, it's still a very interesting show to me, and while I admit it's not one of my favorites on TV at this point, whereas it probably was 2 or 3 years ago, I'm still very interested in it and what happens with the characters, and I'm sure I'll be watching it on a weekly basis. But yeah, before we move on from television here, I do want to make sure that we give a shout out to the Foley work on that mutual masturbation scene in episode 2. Because the sound engineers really deserve his due for that one.
That was solid.
So, yeah,
that was solid. As was I watching that scene.
As was America.
I love a good scene you can play along with at home.
Yeah. All right. Well, if that's more information than you wanted. Too bad, because
you're gonna get
this is the podcast. This is the pod couple.
podcast. Custard. Custards and cobblers everywhere.
This is the Pie Couple with Kyle and Steve, and no mutual masturbation happening
Yet.
at the moment yet. Yeah, stay tuned, and maybe there'll be some surprises in store. And with that, I think there's no better segue than mutual masturbation to move on to Super Tuesday and politics.
Politics, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I applaud you, sir.
So Super Tuesday is today, and the earliest polls start closing at 5 p.m. Arizona time. So we'll have the results rolling in shortly thereafter. So I thought we'd do a little bit of a preview of that. I think that on the Democratic side, really there's 4 states to watch, and that is Vermont, Minnesota, Colorado, and Massachusetts, because Sanders really needs to win all those states to sort of continue being credible. If he loses 2 or 3, I'm sure he's going to win Vermont, which is his home state. But if he loses 2 or 3 of the others,
but he can't just win Vermont. He's got to win it by like a landslide.
Yeah,
he loses credibility there too.
Yeah, he needs to win Vermont very solidly, and then he really needs to win, like I said, at least 2 of the other 3, and likely all 3 to have a lot of credibility going forward, because unless he can pull out Oklahoma or Tennessee. So I think those are
no love for Texas. You don't think he's gonna pull it out there?
I don't think so. I mean, Bernie Sanders pulling out is an image that I think that everyone wants to picture in their heads, but it's not likely there. So I think that's what you want to watch. Tonight is to see how he does in those 4 states. If he does manage to carry all 4, then he may have a case to continue on. But if he does not, especially loses 2 or 3 of them, it's going to be tough for him to make the argument that mathematically he's going to be able to make up ground, or that he can just compete in the other states he's going to need to make up ground going forward. But
he's come out and said he's going forward no matter what.
Well, and I mean, I think what else would he say at this point? Certainly before the election is held, but he very well may. I mean, he certainly has the money to do so. So it's not going to be a lack of campaign funds. So it really just depends on where he's at in terms of wanting to continue to press his message and get that out, and maybe pull Hillary a little further to his side in terms of his views on breaking up the banks and taking on Wall Street or whatever. And so if he's able to, so I can see that, which I don't necessarily think a bad thing. I think that him being in there and being a foil for Hillary helps sharpen her for the general election. So even if he has no real shot at the nomination, I still think there's value to him staying in the race.
Do you worry at all that it becomes sort of a Ralph Nader situation where he's pulling away votes from Hillary and then handing the victory to Trump?
I don't think so, because he's not going to run as a third party, and so you're just talking about if he stays in and then people become embittered and choose not to vote for Hillary because they were so ardent in their support of Sanders. Is that your idea? Yeah, I don't see that happening. I mean, I think that obviously they've been fairly amicable. I'm not saying nobody will do that, but by and large, I think that the people who are going to vote are going to line up behind Hillary. And Sanders, he's not going to tell people not to do that. I mean, he's said himself multiple times, whatever disagreements they have, they can both agree that either one of them is 100 times better than any Republican candidate. So I'm sure he will support her if she does get the nomination, which is seeming more likely.
Do you think if she gets it, he pivots in the vice president position then?
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like a natural fit, or something that he maybe even would want to do. But
who goes to VP then? Do you think Biden just stays? He's already moved in.
Yeah, Biden's very comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, he's already got a bedroom on a lock and everything. Might as well just.
He's got his security, his Secret Service security name.
Yeah. I mean, as long as what is his Secret Service security name?
Joe Biden? It's actually Big Lufa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Big loofah.
I guess they have to change it now that you gave it away.
Oh, shit. Maybe I'm thinking of Bill O'Reilly. That's my bad.
Yeah, yeah. It's easy to confuse the two. I think that, yeah, I don't know with a VP. I know that some of the talk has been about Bill Richardson out of Colorado, I think, as a possible VP candidate, and there's a couple others who've been talked about. But yeah, I mean, if Sanders wants it, if he lobbies for it, then it would put Hillary in a bit of a tough spot, because even if she didn't think he was the strongest person for the ticket, certainly if that became public that she turned him down on his request, that might hurt her and at least take some Sanders supporters out of her column. But anyway, I don't know if that's going to be a big issue. I think that you referenced earlier the Trump being the Republican nominee, which I did not think was going to happen.
Nobody thought it was going to happen,
and
man.
Still may not, but certainly it becomes increasingly more likely with every passing primary. And this today is going to take another big step in that direction, most likely, if the polls are to be believed. He's doing very well in the polls in basically every state that's up for grabs here, and he looks like he's poised to clean up pretty handily. The thing to watch on the Republican side, I think one of the states to watch is Texas, because Cruz will most likely win there, but some of the polls, the recent polls have put it a lot closer than you might think. And if Trump somehow does manage to win in Texas, that would be devastating for Cruz's campaign, and
more devastating than it being the campaign of Ted Cruz.
Well, I don't know if anything can be more devastating than that. But yeah, it would make him seem pretty non-viable if he can't even win his home state, which is the same problem Rubio's facing in about 15 days in Florida, where Trump is currently up by about 20 points in the polling on Rubio. So if Rubio can't win, if Rubio can't win any states, which to date he has not, and is not favored to win any on Super Tuesday, that's bad enough. But certainly
he's trying, man. He's going after Trump hardcore. Finally,
yeah.
He's a little late to the game. They had to stop fighting each other and go after that dude.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why were the other Republican candidates so afraid to take Trump on?
Well, I think that Trump has had, he's obviously had a lot of, when you sort of turn it into a shit fight, Trump has had a lot of success. That seems to be his lane. And so I don't know, I think that maybe people are intimidated and they don't necessarily want to get into that kind of feud with him, because he has shown a propensity to win those kinds of feuds, as mind-boggling as that may seem to you or me. In the eyes of the Republican voters, he has won those. And I think that the other thing, and this is actually jumping ahead a little bit, but one of the things I wanted to talk about with Trump is that, recently, going to Super Tuesday, like you said, they're really pulling out both barrels and trying to take him down, because they recognize how critical this is. And if he's able to jump out to a big lead, it may be getting close to insurmountable. And so there's that. And there's the hashtag Never Trump campaign, if you're familiar with, but a lot of the Republican leaders have jumped onto that, saying, look, we will never vote for Trump, even if he's the nominee. So do not vote for this guy. And Rubio picked that up and has been sort of piggybacking off of that. And of course, Trump also had this recent snafu of among the many snafus he's had, where he basically said, when asked, about David Duke's endorsement of his campaign, he basically said, well, I don't really know these groups.
Look, I don't even know who David Duke is.
Yeah, which to be fair with Trump, he's not really the kind of guy that likes to just shoot off at the mouth. He wants to make sure he gathers all the facts and really considers things before just like stating an opinion. So, I mean,
this is not the type of man to bloviate.
Yeah. So so that was so anyway, and obviously he got quite a bit of shit for that, and he did actually backpedal a bit, which is unusual for him. It shows you like what a big misstep it was that he was willing to backpedal at all. Um, Although, of course, in typical Trump fashion, it was, the very...
He's great at backpedaling. He's the best backpedaler that ever lived. His backpedaling is the most classy, most luxuriant backpedaling you've ever seen.
His backpedal will make your head spin. Yeah, and he, of course, he said his part of his backpedal was, well, the earpiece was bad, so I couldn't hear what he was saying, even though he said, I don't know who this David Duke is. Even though he repeated the question more or less. So it's all sort of amusing if it wasn't so sad. But anyway, so with those sorts of things, anyways, with these movements that are happening at the sort of the 11th hour here, will those have any impact on his chances or on his numbers here? And I tend to think that they will not, partially based on just everything else we've seen so far, and the fact that he hasn't seemed to be impacted by anything he's done, no matter how outrageous to this point. But also, I think that this speaks to your question about why they won't go after him, is that I think that the part of his whole appeal, again, is as this outsider guy who the establishment hates. So the more people go after him and the more the media attacks him or whatever, I think that just makes him stronger. It just feeds into that whole narrative that his supporters have already bought into, that, yeah, like, we hate the establishment because the Republicans have been telling us for years, Washington sucks and it's all terrible and everything's broken and the media lies to you constantly and all this, and they've sown all this distrust with all these institutions. Then why would they care what those people say?
I hate how you're making Donald Trump sound like he has a brilliant strategy.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it is savviness and how much of it is him just being in the right place at the right time, or the wrong.
It's all that. It's all him being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that's how I see it playing out. Is that, and that's one of the reasons why they've been reticent to attack him, because they know that only feeds into that narrative and makes him seem more like the candidate of the common people or the outsiders or anti-Washington or whatever, which is what they want. So yeah, so we'll see. I do you have any thoughts on whether any of that stuff will hurt him?
No, I don't think that there's any stopping him at this point. Honestly, I think it's too late. I think I've seen too many people being interviewed who it doesn't seem his policies don't make a difference. What he says doesn't really make a difference. They recognize his name, and so they're voting for him.
Yeah. Well, again, I tend to not see it as a completely negative thing. While it's a bit of a sad commentary on a large number of Americans, I have to say that I didn't have a lot of respect or high esteem for those Americans to start with.
Right.
So
you didn't lose any friendships over this,
right.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Your view of someone wasn't radically changed.
Yeah.
You knew that girl working at McDonald's left the lettuce off your burger. You knew she was voting for Trump.
Right. So I think that, like I said, I think that's part of it. And also for me, I really do feel, as dangerous as it may be to have him be the candidate and be one step closer to actually winning the presidency, I really do feel he has almost no chance in the general election, and that he's furthermore making him the nominee. It just sows all kinds of discord in the Republican Party and essentially is tearing them asunder, which I find to be a positive outcome.
Yeah, if this wasn't so terrifying, it would still be great. It started off great with a little terrifying. Now it's moved to pretty terrifying and a little great, but it can go back to great pretty quickly.
Yeah. So we speaking of Trump, one thing we decided since he is moving towards the nomination and a bit of a juggernaut fashion, we decided that we would like to
do... Bit of a juggernaut fascist.
Yeah, slip of the tongue.
Whoops.
So we said we want to do a little bit where we choose the most outrageous statement Trump has made over the course of this entire campaign. We thought about limiting it only to the most outrageous statement he made today, to make it a little easier on ourselves. There probably still would have been a lot of things to choose from.
Tons.
But anyway, we wanted a challenge. So we decided to figure out just one. We only can pick one, as hard as that is, out of all the crazy things he said so far. What is the most outrageous in your view, Steve?
Well, I picked one that is outrageous, but when you're picking amongst Donald Trump quotes, to say what is the most outrageous is certainly a challenge. I picked one that isn't just outrageous, but it encapsulates Trump, I think, to his very core, what he is as a candidate. And he said this: "It's a very good quote. It's a very interesting quote, and I know it. I saw it. I saw what? I know who said it." And that's Trump on retweeting a Mussolini quote after he was caught. He basically goes on to say, yeah, Mussolini is Mussolini, but it's a very good quote. And that says to me everything you need to know about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Hitler didn't have all bad ideas.
No. Bad guy, terrible guy, build a wall, keep him out. But he said some things that were very good quotes.
Do I have to throw out all his quotes just because he did the Holocaust?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Yeah, it's
babies in bathwater, man.
That's a good one. And yeah, it certainly speaks to Trump. It also speaks to something we see with Trump, which is that, these kinds of things, quoting Mussolini, another thing that we had talked about was when he repeated the apocryphal story, although I don't think he knew it was apocryphal, of the general who executed a bunch of Muslims by dipping bullets in pig's blood so that they couldn't go to heaven, and then executed 49 and 50 and sent the 50th to tell all his friends, kind of thing, and basically said that really solved the problem, essentially endorsing extra legal executions as a method of solving problems. I mean, these kinds of things happen all the time with him, practically on a daily basis. And I feel like almost any one of these things would have ended any other person's campaign. I mean, do you feel like...
Yeah, no one else could have gotten away with
do you think
this.
Marco Rubio could quote Mussolini and not...
Marco Rubio can't even quote Marco Rubio without people freaking the fuck out.
I know. If he repeats his own catchphrases, he gets torn apart. So yeah, it's just so bizarre to see this guy, be so bulletproof. Like he acknowledges it himself. He acknowledges it when he said, "I could shoot somebody in broad daylight and my supporters wouldn't desert me." So he's arrogant about it. Even I know, surprising arrogance coming from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's usually such a modest fellow, but.
Yeah, everything that would be traditionally poison to any other political campaign is what makes Trump stronger. I think that when you touched on that earlier, people not wanting to get into fights with him, the way that he doesn't backpedal because he doesn't have to. I mean, these are all things that... This is the craziest campaign I've ever seen.
For sure. So my quote, and which I think also really encapsulates something about Trump, is I chose something similar like that I feel like says something about his campaign and why he's been successful. This is something he said at a rally in Birmingham, Alabama, back in November. He said, "I watched when the World Trade Center came tumbling down," and he says, "and I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering as that building was coming down. Thousands of people were cheering." And then he was later pressed by George Stephanopoulos on This Week about, how that was clearly false. And he says, "It was on television. I saw it. It was well covered at the time, George. Now, I know they don't like to talk about it, but it was well covered at the time. There were people in New Jersey that were watching it, a heavy Arab population that were cheering as the buildings came down. Not good." So the thing about this quote, of course, is that it's completely false. That as obviously, first off, you know it's false on its face, because there's no way we wouldn't all remember that. That would have been a huge story. It would have been well covered at the time, as he says, if that indeed had happened. Of course, as the fact checkers went and looked, even though you almost don't need to, since we all can just check our own memories. But in the case we had like some kind of collective amnesia about this, to check it. Of course, no footage exists. Again, this certainly there would be some news footage. If not, I mean, this was 2001, so maybe people weren't quite as handy with the cell phone, but still, somebody would have captured it. And certainly on newscasts or whatever, there's no footage of any kind that exists. You've got YouTube. They've got like commercials from like the 1950s and stuff on YouTube. Like you wouldn't have a copy of this somewhere floating around. But they search all the databases, LexisNexis, for every news article. Basically, the best they come up with is there were 2 news articles that just mentioned that there were like a handful of like possibly celebrating, but these were just reported as unsubstantiated rumors. They weren't even actually reporting that this happened. They were saying there was a rumor that this happened, but it didn't check out, basically, or that we can't actually find any evidence for it or substantiate it with any actual accounts from anybody. So,
well, they should have been watching TV with Donald Trump. I mean, right. He saw it.
Apparently, he had
That's how you substantiate rumors.
Yeah, his own channel, which was the only channel in the world broadcasting this directly to Donald Trump's apartment in New York. But so basically, where he admitted he was. So when you talk about this, it's like, okay, so of all the things he said, it was not on TV, clearly. It was not thousands and I mean, if it happened at all, which seems extremely dubious, but it was clearly not on TV. It was clearly not thousands or even hundreds of people. It was not well covered, and Donald Trump did not see it himself. Yeah. So basically everything he said is factually inaccurate.
And people will hear that, know that it's reported that all of that shit's made up, and still think that Donald Trump's telling the truth about it. Like that he secretly knows, and that the media is lying.
Right. Well, and of course, this is the classic. This is why I picked this quote, because it was so classic about it. Is despite all that, despite the absolute factual inaccuracy of it, despite the demonstrable falsehood of it, like, what do you think the chances are that he backed down at all?
0.
Exactly. He did not choose to back down, even when faced with all that, presented with all that evidence that I just laid out. He chose not to, and he doesn't have to, is the thing, because facts are irrelevant with his supporters, because the thing that matters is the narrative. And the narrative is what they want to believe. The narrative is that Muslims, like either in their entirety or in a high percentage, are all terrorists and hate America. And that feeds into it, this idea that, so it's like, to them, it's true in spirit, if not in actual fact. Like, they probably were cheering, even if they were doing it quietly in their own homes. I think this is sort of the idea that Donald Trump is getting to some greater truth here, this truth that they know, or they believe, and therefore, whether it happened, whether it was actually on television, whether there were actually thousands of people, whether Donald Trump started, like, all that is irrelevant. And that's something it's just so hard to wrap your head around for someone like me who prefers an evidence-based set of thoughts and beliefs and whatever, but yeah, so I think that but that's something that is really important to understand, even when you're looking at Donald Trump and the Donald Trump phenomenon, and looking at his supporters and the kind of people that support him, is you have to wrap your head around that, because otherwise, people just saying, well, what's wrong with people? Why would they fall for this? It's not so much that they're falling for it; it's that they don't give a shit. Like, it's not that's not what's important to them. What's important to them is that he's pushing the narrative that they already adhere to, not that he's presenting the facts. So, anyway, that's why I chose that quote.
The point is, racists, get out there and vote for Trump, because you're not going to see anything like this for a long time after this shit's all over. So now's your chance, racists.
Yeah. Or don't. I mean, you can stay home. You don't have to get out and vote for him.
Yeah, there's also that. That's an option.
I just want to set that out there as an option.
Right. This is freedom. Far be it from us to tell you what to do.
One other thing that I wanted to address with regards to Trump and his voters in terms of getting inside their heads, as frightening a prospect as that may be, is, there was this article by, I'm blanking on the name now, but one of the writers for Vox wrote this article about Trump and how he had gone through all of Trump's debate performances and all the transcripts and essentially tried to break them down and categorize them in some way. And what he found is that Trump has a pretty specific formula for the way he lays out his points time and again. And it's really just a 3-point thing where he sets up the problem, which is usually some version of America isn't winning anymore. Then he moves on to the narrative, which is something along the lines of, because of immigrants or Obamacare, whatever, weak military, etc. And then the solution, which is basically, I'm Donald Trump and I'll make America great again. And it's really
a solid plan.
It's really some variation of that 3-point plan. And that's obviously so unbelievably simplistic and divorced from reality or the complexities of the real world. But I think that, again, to someone like you or I, that we look at that and it's laughable, and we think, well, like how can anyone, this be appealing to anyone when it's so clearly foolish or just or fantastical or whatever. But for supporters, the thing to understand is that lack of detail, that lack of complexity, is not a bug. It's a feature. That's what they want. They want the world to be a simpler place. So it's this idea of simpler narratives or simple narratives, which is something I'll probably end up talking about a lot over the weeks in this podcast. But I really do think that that's a key to the way that a lot of people think. They want the world to be simpler than it is. Like, it's scary to think of the world as this complex, really hard to understand place with all kinds of forces outside of your control and, interrelated parts and unintended consequences, et cetera, et cetera. But, so to retreat from that and think, oh yeah, like, yeah, why don't we just build a wall and we'll fix immigration, or why don't we just, do these things? That's very appealing, to a certain group of people, and I can understand the appeal to some degree, because I think we'd all like simpler solutions to our problems, whether they be on a national level or on a personal level. But that, wishing doesn't make it so, is the bottom line.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify that I know it's pretty circle jerky and probably intellectually lazy and dishonest to sit there and say, if you vote for Trump, you're a racist. And I'm not saying if you vote for Trump, you're a racist. I'm saying you're a racist if you vote for Trump. So, just to clarify.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely not that every Trump voter is a racist, but probably most racists are Trump voters. Right. So,
it's a whole square rectangle thing.
Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, so I don't know where that gets us. Again, I don't necessarily think I don't know you can bridge that gap, but that's one of the challenges that I've encountered over the years is how do you bridge a gap, if it's possible at all, from people who really just want the world to be simpler and pine for something that is more that's just easy to break down and understand complex problems that could be broken down into bite-sized 3-point plans, like what Trump is doing. I mean, how do you appeal to that group of people?
Twitter?
Or can you? Yeah, maybe Twitter. Maybe the pod, at the pod couple, will become our way of reaching out to those people. So
if you have any questions, just ask Kyle. He knows everything.
All right. So nice little plug for the Twitter feed. I like how we were able to do that organically. Um, and and anyway, that's probably enough for politics here. Obviously, we'll check in next week, see where things are at after Super Tuesday.
But now it's time for our play along at home game.
Yes, absolutely. Play along at home with our director series. Paul Thomas Anderson is the director. We are now on Magnolia, his third film.
Yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson made a pretty solid directorial debut with Hard Eight, followed up with a real heavy hitter in Boogie Nights, and then decided he wanted to make the world's longest music video with Magnolia. And let's get into it, Kyle. What'd you think about Magnolia?
Well, I really like this movie. I find that it's a movie that I enjoy probably more every time I see it, and I can understand some of the criticisms, and that maybe there's moments in which he tried to overreach or whatever, but I don't know. I just feel like I'm such a fan of filmmaking where they're really swinging for the fences and trying interesting things, and whether every single piece of it works or not, it's just kind of exhilarating to see someone go for it in the way that he goes for it when he makes this film, and the choices that are made, and the
Yeah, he really
performances.
did not back off after Boogie Nights was a huge critical success. He could have played it much safer than he did with Magnolia. Do you
Yeah.
think it's a better movie than Boogie Nights?
I don't. That was actually something I thought about after watching it. I think that overall, I'd still prefer Boogie Nights as a complete film.
Yeah,
But
it's because Boogie Nights is better.
but there are moments of Magnolia which certainly rival or exceed anything in Boogie Nights, I think. So, and it's a high wire act on
For sure.
a level that is even more impressive, I think, than Boogie Nights. I feel like it's a much harder movie to pull off, probably in the end, and doesn't always get pulled off quite as seamlessly. But still, I mean, for sure, if you haven't seen it, which I'm sure you're playing along, but if you haven't, you should.
Good job, Delaney.
Yeah, you should check it out. One of the things that I had mentioned last week was that when I made my feature film, 7 Hours in Heaven, one of my inspirations in terms of the way music was used was this film. And since you're our resident music guy, I was curious about what your thoughts were on the use of music. And
I feel like it's great use of music, and he's generally good with that. That's something I've noticed going back through it, even back to Hard Eight. Not just the songs, as I've said before, that he chooses, but the score itself as well. And obviously, this movie, more so than probably any of his others, very reliant on the music, not only in that scene where you see all the characters basically doing the music video and just singing along with the Amy Mann song, but just having the Melora Waters, I think that's her name, the junkie character, having her say to John C. Reilly, "Now that we've met, would you object to never seeing me again?"
Right.
Which is again lifted from Amy Mann lyrics. So he's really infusing this script with the music, and you can tell that it inspired him a lot.
That is such a weird choice, to have the actors actually singing the song.
Super weird.
Do you think it works? Do you ultimately
Absolutely.
like it? Yeah.
I absolutely think it works. For me, it works. And it's interesting going back and seeing this movie again, because I think the things that I didn't think worked when I first saw the movie work much better for me now. And some
Yeah.
of the things that I initially was sort of perplexed by or may have had a problem with, upon revisiting it, it's like you said, the more I see it, the more I like it. And that's one of the moments where I remember seeing this movie in the theaters and going, what the hell is happening?
Right.
How do they all know this song? And going back and looking at it now, I love that part. I think it's great.
Yeah, me too. That and that montage is something that was a very direct inspiration for one of the montages in my film. In fact, like even following the camera moves. Mine is not quite as extensive as.
Well, good luck following this dude's camera moves. I've never. That's the other thing. Like at the beginning of this movie, I'm sitting there. Anderson moves the camera so much.
Yeah.
Like there's a part where Julianne Moore is getting a prescription from, she's getting prescriptions from various people so she can get them all filled. And any other director would just show the guy writing the prescription and then handing it over, or maybe, not even show that.
Right.
But PTA starts way back and zooms way in, and it's a shot that obviously is going to take, however long, 30 minutes to set up for like a super quick, here's the prescription and handing it over thing. And he's just all of this movement. I mean, that guy's got so much energy.
Yeah. I mean, it's just watching the way the camera moves. I mean, obviously the probably the most impressive, at least for me, moment is the way that is the follow along tracking shots in the studio where they're shooting What Do Kids Know, the television program, and he's doing these really long tracking shots following different people through the hallways and into rooms, and then someone else walks by and the camera switches its focus to that person and it follows them, and yet it's telling a whole story.
He's doing Birdman like way before Birdman was a thing in that moment. And he doesn't just do that long tracking shot. Once that shot cuts, it cuts to another tracking shot following, eventually settling on Philip Baker Hall. And it's not nearly as long as the first one, but it's like it doesn't just cut to a static shot after that.
Right.
He just keeps it moving.
Yeah, and it's all very efficient filmmaking too, because it's not just showing off. He's not just doing it to do it. It's very much introducing you to characters, setting the stage, setting the table for the things that need to happen next, and so it's used very effectively. It could have just been something to be showy or whatever, or just to kind of demonstrate that he knows how to use a Steadicam or something. But it ends up being much more than that, which is cool. I thought that. What was I going to say? I thought that there were some other fun shots or movements of the camera. One that I really liked, again, in terms of its efficiency, is when the dad and Stanley, the little kid who's the budding genius, they get into the car and the camera's pushing in on the car door as it shuts, and then it suddenly pulls out as the car door is opening, and now they're at the new location. And so you don't have to see the car travel. You don't have to see it pull away or anything. It's just, and to use that, just that camera motion essentially to tell us the whole movement of the car and the cover all the transport from place to place was, again, just a fun bit of efficient filmmaking.
And when he does the nod to the Jack Nicholson in The Shining, where the camera follows the axe into the door, when Stanley's dad throws the stool and the camera follows that was reminiscent of The Shining to me. Yeah. I thought that was a nice little touch.
Yeah, I didn't connect those two. I wonder if that was intentional. Probably was.
I wouldn't be surprised, or it could have been anything else. Like, this dude loves to load up his script with references and dig deep, so.
So obviously there's a lot of movement for the camera, as we talked about with PTA. But one of the things that also struck me is there are a couple of scenes where he really holds a static shot for a long time, and they happen to be scenes that are usually surrounding the characters, John C. Reilly's character Jim, the cop, and Melora Walters' character Claudia. And so, do you think that was something that was chosen for a specific reason, to do it that way? It
seems to almost emphasize their love story a little bit, and one thing that Anderson does in this movie, which I did notice for as much as he moves the camera, is in conversations when there's crosstalk, he doesn't cross-cut. A lot of the time, not nearly as much as a lot of as you're used to seeing in standard film. He really lingers on people's reactions to other people talking, and I do think that I noticed that that's the first time the camera stops moving in the movie, from what I remember, is when it settles on John C. Reilly's character. suddenly it calms way down. So I have to assume that because he thought of the Melora Waters character first, he conceived her first, and then the rest of the movie came from her, that the stillness in the camera must have something to do with the two of them. But that's an
Yeah,
interesting observation.
yeah. The moment, probably the most interesting use of it is when he has in the kitchen. She's making coffee, and he actually leaves it still. Even when they leave frame, the actors walk out of the room, and the camera's just on an empty room for a few seconds as you still hear their voices continue to speak, and then they walk back into frame. That happens a couple different times. So yeah, so it's certainly a deliberate choice. But yeah, I thought maybe it was something about uh, that John C. Reilly, once he's in her presence, he provides some kind of stability for her.
Right.
Yeah, like acting as this rock for someone whose life is generally in chaos, and that might have been part of what he was trying to underline there. I'm not sure, but it's definitely interesting, and it's striking in a movie where the camera is so energetic when he makes those decisions. So I have to imagine it was not just that they ended up getting a really good, one take and decided to, well, fuck it, let's not edit this thing. It's already beautiful the way it is. But maybe, who knows? In filmmaking, sometimes accidents like that happen and wind up in
Yeah,
films.
but when you have as many good intentions and you have a solid skeleton like PTA always seems to bring to the table, then you're going to find more happy accidents than you would with other filmmakers. And one of the things that he, again, we've seen it in Boogie Nights, and again does it so well here, is one thing you talked about last time, is the bench. The bench in this movie, once again, so deep that Felicity Huffman, who's a monster, she's such a talented actress, is basically doing nothing in this movie.
Right.
You could have picked anybody else. You could have cast anybody to play that specific part. You got Felicity Huffman.
Yep. Yeah. And Patton Oswalt, although certainly not as famous as he is now, like in the film for about 10 seconds. Alfred Molina again has a much smaller role than he had in Boogie Nights. So practically a
Tons
cameo.
of people, man. Neil Flynn's in this flick. Thomas Jane, Clark Gregg, Jim Beaver from Deadwood.
Thomas Jane is just in a picture. he's not even in the film really. He's just he plays a young Jimmy Gator. In a photograph. So yeah, so it is amazing, and in the characters in this film. I mean, clearly this is a film that's built on characters. That was the goal, and they're so good and they're so interesting, and they really develop all the characters in these deep ways. Some ways which I noticed again on a rewatch here. Some of the fun little things that I don't think I ever caught before. Several of them have to do with John C. Reilly's character, Jim, who I think I maybe found problematic the first time or two through,
Really?
but I really have grown to enjoy. There's this moment at the very beginning when he's getting introduced, where he's watching a newscast. It's like clearly a morning show, like a local morning show where they're wake up kind of show where they're saying these cheesy lines, and the newscasters are doing the fake laugh thing that they do, and he's laughing along with them, but there's music over it, so it's a fairly long shot, so it's not something they focus on, but he's just cracking up, having his morning coffee, listening to these cheesy lines. Did you catch that? Yeah, and I think that just tells you so much about him, and that's interesting. There's another nice shot that's very efficient in terms of telling his story, where after he's responded to this call and determined there's a dead body in this apartment, all these other cops show up, and he's relegated to this corner, and the camera just it's focused on him, but it's kind of just pushing in slowly as all these other cops they're asking questions and offering their opinions, and then he tries to speak up, and he's immediately cut off, and there's like, we'll take it from here. We don't even want to hear you. And so and it just shows you his sense of isolation and his sense of not being respected. That is it's an early on thing, but it gives you all that information you need, and it's so much of that showing and not telling. He doesn't have to say, I'm lonely. He doesn't have to say like, oh, people don't respect me. He does say that stuff later in the film, to be
Yeah.
fair, but it's not, that's not to give us information. That's obviously to empathize with the Claudia character. So yeah, and we already know that because we've already been shown that in about what 10 seconds, 15 seconds. So it was very very cool. Um, what other characters really stand out for you besides Frank T.J. Mackey, who we'll get to? Because
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. This movie's got some really solid performances from a lot of different people. Philip Seymour Hoffman, time and time again, just shows that what this guy can do, like how he sinks into this part. This isn't the showiest part. This isn't the part where he gets the grandstand or to do some lengthy flowery monologue. Philip Seymour Hoffman listens so well, and I think that's, that PTA serves, or he serves PTA's vision really well, and the idea of when, Jason Robards is talking to him and it's just Philip Seymour Hoffman reacting, just like listening to this old man's stories, like, it's brilliant, man. I had to like pause the movie and walk away because I was tearing up because I was so sad that Philip Seymour Hoffman was dead. Like, that's how good he was,
Yeah.
And so he's great. I didn't feel I obviously we know he's great. I feel like I kind of skipped over or didn't give enough credit to Julianne Moore when we talked about Boogie Nights last time. So I'd really like to call attention to her here because she's phenomenal. The levels at which she's acting, the various ways she can say, and the various meanings she can pin to just the phrase "fuck you." You need to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
I mean, she's great, man. This is probably one of her best performances.
Yeah, I think that she reaches like another level in this film, and in general that ties into something I want to talk about, which is just the fact that one thing I love about this script and I love about this film is that almost every single actor is given at least one scene, sometimes more than one, but at least one scene where they just get to go balls out, like holding nothing back, like just lay everything on the line, go for it kind of scene. And those scenes are not thick on the ground. They're hard to come by, and everybody gets something like that in this film. All the major characters, anyway. So I don't know. I thought maybe we could talk about a few of them. For Hoffman, he, like you said, he doesn't have the showiest parts, but I think that the scene for him that probably is when he's on the phone trying to get through to Frank T.J. Mackey, and he's having to work through basically the phone bank operators for for his seduce and destroy system, but just the way he has to convince this guy who clearly has no motivation to talk to him, and the way he lays it out, with this is that scene in the movie where you're the guy who helps me in that part of the movie, and it's really it's really tremendous because you buy that. Hey, if I was on the other end of that line, I would help him. And with Moore, I think that the scene you were just talking about is the one for me. Although she has several great ones, that one where she's breaking down in the lawyer's office and admitting everything that she's done to her.
It's pretty hard to break your heart when someone's talking about how they've sucked other men's cocks, but when she breaks on the word cocks, I broke with her. I was right there. I was like, oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, we're not accustomed to breaking on other men's cocks, but this is this is one exception to the rule. Usually I'm very sturdy when it comes to...
Eyes on the prize.
But yeah, so I think that, for sure. And then, like you said, then she breaks into that whole repetition of shut the fuck up, you must shut the fuck up. And it's crazy. I mean, she says it about 4 or 5 different times, and every time there's another layer of meaning there. What else? I think that well, we haven't even talked yet about William H. Macy, who plays whiz kid Donnie Smith, another in a line of incredible sad sacks.
Who hurt Paul Thomas Anderson, by the way? That's what I want to know. Was he cheated on by a drug addict before he made this movie? Because this is not the movie that you want to watch if you are looking to have your faith in humanity restored. This is people. Everyone here is kind of a pile of shit. Everyone here is a garbage person floating in a river.
Oh, way to call it back.
Yeah. But Macy, so great, man. He plays the role with such delicacy.
Yeah, and here's my question for you: would you rather be William H. Macy's character in this film or in Boogie Nights?
I'd rather. Shit. That's tough because you go Boogie Nights, then at least you get to control your own destiny to a certain degree. But I got this thing about my teeth, man. I can't have them getting fucked up from a fall. I guess Quiz Kid. Is he sadder? Is he a sadder character than Little Bill?
So I think the thing about Little Bill is that he at least seems competent at his job.
It's funny that that's your deciding factor. Whatever happens. I mean, sure, he's a murderer / suicide guy, but the man knows how to run a camera.
He seemed like an excellent AD. So that's something to hang his hat on. I mean, what does Quiz Kid Donnie Smith have? Just that he was once
he
good.
Has a lot of love to give.
Yeah, that's true. He does have a lot of love to give, and that's the scene, of course. That whole scene, it plays out over the course of several cuts, and of course that's part of the thing with this film is it's sometimes hard to even delineate the scenes because they don't play out in full sections.
They're all woven together. That's the thing, because I know we're going to have the part where we talk about our favorite scene from the movie, and as I'm trying to keep that in mind as I'm watching, and I'm like, this is all the same scene.
Right.
This whole damn movie's a scene.
Right. It does make it tricky. I mean, yeah, the scene for William H. Macy where I feel like his really go for it scene is the one in the bar where he's getting drunker and talking about how he has all this love to give and everything else, but and finally admitting his long held love for Brad the bartender, but yet it plays out over 4 or 5 different cuts between that and
yeah, it really makes that What Do Kids Know like the longest game show on television. The show's so long.
It was like an hour and a half in real time.
No wonder that kid pissed his pants.
I know I pissed my pants on the couch watching it. Which is weird because I could have easily paused it and gotten up. I guess I
No, you were so...
I was riveted.
Yeah.
Yeah, Delaney was not happy about that. But anyway, so we settling on Little Bill? Are we going with Little Bill?
I think so, man.
Okay. Murder suicide for the win.
Not thrilled about it, but a little Bill about it.
Yeah. We had to go with one. I mean, it was a gun to your head situation, much like Little Bill.
There it is.
So what other scenes? Of course, there's the Jimmy Gator confession scene, which is so powerful, and the way that he intones, I don't know, but let you clearly understand that he does know, is masterful. I mean, yeah, and Hall again, I'm just like, goddamn, why isn't this guy in more movies?
Put him in more shit, dude. When he starts losing it on the kids' TV show, and he just starts talking about giving away the answer to the song that they're playing. Oh, that was superb acting, man.
Yeah,
because I've talked to that guy in real life. Like, I've met the old man that's like losing it, you know, and he just captured it perfectly. Oh, so great.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish he got. I mean, I know he probably works a reasonable amount, but how many roles like this does he get? I mean, or really juicy roles where he can sink his teeth into, and it's probably a shame that he doesn't get more, or there aren't more written for.
Or maybe we just appreciate him more.
Maybe
since we see him so little.
Maybe so, but but he's tremendous. You know, the of course, I guess we have to probably can't wait any longer. I know people are clamoring at home for us to talk about the great Frank T.J. Mackey, as played by Tom Cruise. So yeah, this is one of the, I mean, certainly one of the great performances of Cruise's career. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, which he did not win, but probably should have. He really.
Who do you lose to? Do you know?
I think it was Michael Caine for a role that was probably like I'm sure a very competent.
Tom Cruise.
Michael Caine appearing on the podcast, surprise appearance in Studio G. So yeah,
Give me the Oscar. You see that? You hear that, America?
Yeah, Oscar committee. Oscars continue.
Give it to a black lesbian. Black lesbians
they want to lose
matter.
that Oscar so white hashtag. So yeah, I think that this character, of course, Cruise plays Mackie as this seminar. He gives these seminars on how to pick up chicks, essentially, the seduce and destroy system, but he does it in the style of a revival preacher, and it's really infused with an energy that is so over the top as to be both hilarious and sad and poignant and maddening, like all at the same time. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Great. I think that one of my favorite moments in the film, relevant to Frank T.J. Mackey, is when we focus on the projection while he's giving his presentation that says how to fake like you're a nice and caring person, and then it's just a perfect little pan over to Tom Cruise at his Tom Cruisiest. And I like to think that that's the whole reason Paul Thomas Anderson casted him in the movies, so he could make that joke. I can't prove it, but that's what I like to think. Yeah, Cruise is great here. I don't know that I've ever seen him be more effective. This is what PTA did with Mark Wahlberg, and maybe he thought, well, that was too easy. Let me give myself more of a challenge and elevate Tom Cruise to the next level, to a level as yet unmatched.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I don't know. Maybe I have more respect for Tom Cruise as an actor than you do. I think that he often plays the Tom Cruise role in movies because that's certainly been a bankable role, but. I think he's been able to step outside that at times in his career. I think he has the talent to do it. I think this movie shows that. I think another one is Born on the 4th of July. And
fair enough. Never seen Born on the 4th of July.
But
I have seen Far and Away. So are you sure?
I'm not saying he can do everything. I'm not saying he's the best actor in the world, but I think that he's capable of doing more than the typical Tom Cruise.
He was great in Tropic Thunder.
So yeah, it's just a matter of whether he's willing to take those risks always, or whether he just wants to play it safe and keep making $20 million a movie or whatever. So
and just keep being an action hero well into his 50s or 60s at this point.
Yeah, right,
running.
So but as far as this was it's interesting that he even played this part, that he chose to play this part, that he certainly is not the typical Tom Cruise role. And I don't know if he was just so impressed with Boogie Nights or what Anderson's pitch was to him, but obviously I'm very glad that it happened, because it's hard to imagine anyone else in this part. And I'm sure someone else could have done it well, but it does seem so much of a piece with Tom Cruise and playing off of his persona, and yeah, that it would be I think it'd be a very different performance from anyone else.
Yeah, I kept imagining what if he had put Mark Wahlberg, because it is kind of funny. You see his regular cast from Boogie Nights. Everybody. Luis Guzman comes back, even in a small role. He's really good at working with his stable of actors, and then Mark Wahlberg's nowhere to be found. And so I kept thinking, I wonder if he had at some point considered Wahlberg for the Mackie character. But I doubt that it would have been as good.
Yeah, I can't really see Wahlberg doing it. He doesn't. have that sort of volcanic energy that the character required. Um, but and yeah, as far as I know, Wahlberg never appeared in any other PTA film after Boogie Nights. So I don't know if he didn't have a great experience with them, or
Probably
if they do
not.
just
He's probably like, I'm not doing 80 fucking takes of anything ever again. I will never do a movie where someone makes me do 80 takes.
um, but yeah, that was as far as that the TJ Mackey thing. There's a lot of great lines. The how to fake like you're nice and caring is one of my favorites. Another one that I love is having a few chick friends lying around can be real useful in setting jealousy traps, as we'll see in chapter 3.
Yeah.
That one cracks me up every time. So, gosh, what else can we talk about here? I mean, obviously for the Mackie character, his big scene, Cruz's big scene, where he gets to, I mean, he's kind of going for it the whole film, but certainly the bedside breakdown at the end. And after all the bravado we've seen from this character, to see him so vulnerable is really powerful juxtaposition.
Yep. All with Philip Seymour Hoffman in the back, just listening.
Yep, just killing it. Killing it quietly.
Out of focus, still acting his ass off.
Yep. So I mean, I guess the one other thing before we move on to our favorite scene, favorite line that we probably have to talk about is the frogs. This is, again, spoiler alert. This movie's almost 20 years old now, but yeah, the end of the film, of course, has this scene where the frogs just start falling from the sky, apropos of nothing really, and there's a lot of neat visual stuff that happens. Of course, probably my favorite is when Claudia is doing lines on her coffee table, and she hears a couple of sounds behind her, and then all of a sudden sees in the reflection of the TV as the shadows of these frogs what are they? I guess shadows that are reflecting onto her curtains or plummeting through the sky. But that was something that obviously, again, it's a weird choice. And when I first saw the film, I felt like, what the fuck? Like this was when I saw it when it came out in '99. But I think, well, let me get your take first, and
I'll go back to what I said earlier. This was one of the things that when I saw the film in the theaters, I thought, well, that's a pretty lazy ass thing to do, and it doesn't really make any sense. And I was watching all of these threads, and I was expecting them. I was anticipating that it gets sewn up in some expert way, and I just couldn't wait because I couldn't figure out how the writer was going to do it. And then we get a bunch of frogs, and I was like, all right, not recommending this movie to my mom and dad. This is something that would put them off. And going back and rewatching it now, I love the frogs, man. I love them. I think they're great.
Yeah, the thing that's weird to me is that when I saw it the first time, I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this makes no sense, just as you said. But yet, when I watch it the second time, I'm like, oh yeah, they set the whole thing up in the very opening of the film. Like, how did I not get that the first time?
The whole time. It's frogs all the way down, buddy. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, that whole entire opening sequence, which is brilliant, by the way.
Shout out to Ricky Jay.
Yeah. Who also has a small role in the film. But yeah, with Greenberry Hill and the scuba diver in the tree and all that stuff it's all setting up the frogs. And so I'm not sure how I missed that the first time through, but hey, we've grown as film appreciators.
I guess so.
In the last 15, 16 years. So I don't know, any other thoughts on this one before we move on? I mean, there's still other things we could talk about. I mean, I guess one thing that I do want to give a quick shout out to April Grace, who plays Gwen, the reporter that takes on Cruz and questions him, because that's a tough role, and she goes toe to toe with Cruz and just completely holds her own.
Yeah,
and she's not someone who I have seen in a lot of other things. And watching this film makes me wonder why, because I'm like, she was great. As I did quickly look at her IMDb page, I saw that one of her earliest roles was as transporter technician Hubble on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Ah.
So, anyway,
Well, so she peaked young.
yeah,
Got it.
yeah. I think we all remember transporter technician Hubble.
Does everyone on Star Trek: The Next Generation just have some vaguely related space name? That's like Hubble laying it on a little thick.
Yeah.
For Star Trek.
Yeah, Star Trek is usually really subtle in the way that it manages things, so it's surprising. But yeah, anyway, like I said, you want to talk about favorite scenes, favorite lines?
Yeah, hit me.
All right.
Hit me with it.
You want me to go first?
I'll go first.
All
Wait,
right.
am I doing scene or line?
Let's do scenes.
My favorite scene in this movie, and it's hard to say for sure. This is a really tough one. But I have to go with frog scene. The aforementioned frog scene is probably my favorite scene in this movie. And It's a tough call, but I love it, and it's so well done. They've made a ton of fake frogs for this thing. Even following the frog down to when it hits Philip Baker Hall's gun is a lot of fun. William H. Macy just fucking taking it in the face. Like that I really felt that slap. John C. Reilly, everybody freaking out. Just unmitigated, pure chaos throughout the entire world. And all these characters' lives, they're all bonded by this crazy ass event.
But by the way, does Jimmy Gator die in a fire?
Yes.
Okay, because they don't really establish that.
No, it is a little weird.
It feels strange that they don't come back to tie that off, because they do.
They cut. There was a scene that like cemented the idea that he definitely died in the fire, and they left it on the cutting room floor.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, but it's weird. I mean, this movie is great, but it has problems. It's got some problems.
Yeah.
Even Paul Thomas Anderson himself said as recently as January that he would have edited the movie down. He's like, that movie's long as shit.
I guess with 3 hours and 10 minutes, they didn't have time to work in a scene of Jimmy Gator burning to death.
No. Yeah, it's funny that it's over 3 hours and there's still shit that doesn't get tied up.
Right.
That's how much is going on in this movie. But frog scene for the win. And yours?
Mine, I'm going to go with the monologue delivered by Jason Robards.
That was my second choice, man!
Well, I'm glad you didn't pick
We're
it.
fucking on.
Didn't step on each
on
other's
the
toes
same
here.
page. I love that.
Yeah, so Jason Robards, who we haven't even talked about. This is how many amazing performances. We ran through like 10 amazing performances, and we didn't even talk about Robards, who plays, of course, Earl Partridge, this dying man dying of I don't know, whatever it is. Is it brain cancer?
It's
or lung cancer?
Lung cancer, because he died of lung cancer in real life a year later.
Really?
Yeah.
So he was working off of like his real lung cancer, or did he?
I don't know.
Well,
perhaps whatever he was doing, it worked.
I could believe it, because I mean, it's certainly one of the most genuine, authentic portrayals I've ever seen of a man on his deathbed, suffering, knowing, still having some awareness, enough awareness to know what's happening, but realize that the inevitable is near. And he gives this monologue that I didn't time it, but it's got to be 8 to 10 minutes, right? I mean, it's long.
Yeah.
Where he essentially just runs down his whole history, his history of infidelities and terrible behavior as a father and as a husband, and then starts talking about how life isn't short, life is long. It's this is someone who's at the end of his life, whose end of his life is imminent, who's talking about how life is long, which is really really poignant. And then the fact that, about the regret, the way he repeats that word regret over and over again, and it's just suffused with so much feeling.
Haunted.
Yeah, exactly. Haunting is a perfect descriptor. But not only is it just a scene where you see an actor. I mean, after I literally paused the film after that, and I turned to Delaney and I said, how many actors get a scene that good to play in their entire lives? Not too many,
right.
So such an incredible scene, incredible monologue. But what I think puts it over the top even is, besides the performance, and of course Seymour Hoffman, who's doing an incredible job of listening, as you say, and reacting to what's going on, but then the way that they lay the end of the monologue underneath all these other characters, and this, cutting between these other characters, when you just have, I don't think there's any even ambient sound. It's just his voice, that haunting voice, talking about regret underneath, as we check in with the different people, and it really ties everyone together in a powerful way. So,
yeah,
well done,
it's phenomenal. That's actually my best line from the movie comes from that monologue.
Okay, nice.
And it's I would have just written down the whole monologue and performed it poorly, probably doing a lackluster Michael Caine impression.
that's really what the fans wanted.
Decided that's for the 5th episode.
Yeah, we'll
not
save
the 4th. But the line that really stuck with me is, "Don't ever let anyone say to you that you shouldn't regret anything." And I think that as a single line is a great. The idea, and the monologue as a whole, is the idea of taking this regret and making something good with it, and probably remembering to turn your alarm on your cell phone off.
We don't want that to be too professional.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's my line from the movie. What's yours?
My line comes from our good friend Frank T.J.
Mackey.
And you may know where I'm going with this, but when he arrives at the house and he says, "Hey, Phil, I will drop kick those fucking dogs if they come near me." And then he says it again later. It's such a good line. He says it twice. Yeah. And so, and it's just hilarious. Cracks me up every time.
Yeah, it's a great moment, especially because the way that scene's set up, with him being outside the door and the sort of the camera's positioned far away, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, and they're talking across the doorway, and it's sort of all set up to be out of the way, and he's clearly like a stranger in this environment, and that's just like a great moment of levity with Frank T.J. Mackey. So. Yeah, excellent choice.
I think another reason I like it is because I feel like that's something that my brother Noah would say.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Noah.
So, shout out to Noah, one of our loyal listeners.
And the world's second best Tom Cruise.
Yeah, if the part hadn't gone to Tom Cruise, I think Noah was second in line.
TCNG would have it, for sure.
So,
honorable mention on lines.
Okay.
Have you ever been struck by lightning? It hurts. It's a William H. Macy as a sad sack.
Yeah. So before we move on here to our little music segment, I just wanted to ask you one other question. Now that we've seen 3 of Anderson's films in a row here, 3 weeks running, are you noticing any themes emerging? Anything that you feel ties these films together as kind of as a piece, or?
Well, he seems pretty... like he has a pretty dark sense of humor, for sure. And I don't know that I've thought of any themes as a whole, although there definitely seem to be... This is, as you said with Boogie Nights, this is a guy that loves movies, and there seems to be a lot of nods to movies and movie making in the meta sense in all 3 of these movies, but more so with Boogie Nights and Magnolia. So, what conclusions do you draw, sir?
Well, I think that, I talked about last week how the Boogie Nights is a lot about family, and I think you can see that emerging here as well. And really looking back on Hard Eight, Hard Eight, Philip Baker Hall is very much a surrogate father to figure to both John C. Reilly and Gwyneth Paltrow's characters, and he's and then you talk about this film Magnolia is all about family, fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, husbands and wives. Even someone like the William H. Macy character, has this. He clearly has been scarred by his relationship with his parents, even though they're never on screen, and the way that they mistreated him, stole his money. So you have that, and just every character in the film is really, either seeking love or has lost love or love found too late or whatever. So there's all those elements with love and forgiveness and everything that run through it. And I think if you look back, that's the case a lot of in Boogie Nights too. There's a lot of people seeking love, seeking these things in unconventional places, and same thing with Hard Eight, and certainly there's a big strain of forgiveness with Philip Seymour Hoffman's, Philip Baker Hall's character. The damn Phillips keep
every time.
Well, they both have two names or three names rather. Yeah, but yeah, when the Phillips head screwdriver is trying but Philip Baker Hall's character, of course, is essentially looking for forgiveness for killing the real father of John C. Reilly. So I think you're starting to see those themes really emerge between these films and these ideas of family and how dysfunctional these families can be, and how much of it is a really reflection of the love that they're seeking.
Father figure's a definite big one for Anderson in all three of these movies so far. So something to keep an eye on moving forward. What's the next movie? Punch Drunk Love?
I'm pretty sure it's Punch Drunk Love. Okay. We should probably know that. So I will look it up surreptitiously while we are continuing to podcast here. But I believe it's time for everyone's favorite segment. Oh, we have intro music now. Yeah. look at the production quality rising.
I wrote that song myself.
That's very impressive. Well, since you're so good with music, as you've just demonstrated, why don't you teach me about modern music?
Well, this week I thought something to try to tie it all together a little bit. I thought to myself, if Magnolia were remade today, who would Paul Thomas Anderson, who would be a likely successor to the Amy Mann throne? Obviously, she's a big part of Magnolia, so I wanted to pick someone that I thought is dark and smart and funny, but also ballsy. And I picked the singer-songwriter Annie Clark, better known by her stage name as Saint Vincent, and her self-titled, I like to give you self-titled things like Run the Jewels Volume 2. Her self-titled most recent album is just called Saint Vincent. And I think that specifically the song, which was the first signal, is called Birth in Reverse. So definitely check that out. Check out the rest of the album. But I think that for fans of Amy Mann, Saint Vincent, very, very solid. I like her quite a bit. And on top of that, I am now for the next, going through the month of March, I'm going to have a theme, and you can play along at home. There will be a common thread throughout all of my musical recommendations for the month of March. And if you can figure out and tweet at us or email us, or get a hold of us, if you can figure out what the common theme for all of these musical acts are, then we'll get you a prize. And I don't know what that prize is.
I'm sure it'll be lavish.
But maybe I'll write you your own theme song like I just did in this one. You've seen how competent I am when it comes to that sort of thing. But not nearly as competent as St. Vincent with the album St. Vincent from 2013.
Well, I'm a big fan of Amy Mann. I love the music of this movie, so I'm very much looking forward to checking out St. Vincent.
She rocks a lot harder than Amy Mann does.
Okay.
But yeah, Amy Mann, great. She's awesome.
So yeah, well, I'm looking forward to checking it out. Just as I checked out the internet.
Yeah. How was the death of your ego, sir?
It fought hard as it was its last gasps, but it was very. I actually really enjoyed it, and I thought that as I was listening to the album, I felt like these songs really could appear in almost any sex scene in a Will Smith film, and
I think that's what they were going for.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what they're going for, but they definitely achieved it, and I liked it because who doesn't like thinking about Will Smith having sex when they're listening to music?
When my baby says, "Do you want to do it doggy style?" I say, "No, I want to do it Big Willie style."
Nicely done, sir. So but it has really does have that nice, like, very chill jazzy feel to the music. And you could see just kind of hanging out at a dark a bar sort of full of dark wood and dim lighting, listening to that kind of music, and hanging out with friends. And
Nice, man.
so
That's good. I'm glad you're checking it out. Also, St. Vincent has a song from the show Girls, so it also kind of ties into our podcast, being that they were featured on Girls a few seasons back.
And just to clarify for those who want to play along with your music theme game, this is we're in March right now. Is this St. Vincent part of this?
Yes, this is the first part. This is the first clue to the larger puzzle, which will be announced in April, which might also be a clue. You never know.
Very good. So the next and final
in
segment,
our Peabody Award-winning segment.
Yes. Kyle reminds Steve that books are still a thing. Back with another installment. This week, I am going to recommend a book that I just finished myself, Dead Wake, The Last Crossing of the Lusitania by Erik Larson. Now,
why does that name sound familiar?
Erik Larson or Lusitania?
No, yeah. Larson.
He's written several books. They all usually are these sort of historical narratives. They're nonfiction books, but they're written in sort of a narrative style. One of his more famous books is called The Devil in the White City, which is about the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago.
Okay, I've heard of that book.
So yeah, I think they're making a movie out of it with DiCaprio in the lead role, I believe, or at least that's been rumored. I mean, I don't know if he's just attached or what, but yeah. So it intersects the World's Fair with this serial killer. And anyway, it's pretty good. It's actually, I think this actually, if you're looking for one Erik Larson book, that's maybe a better place to start than the one I just finished. But also very good is Dead Wake, and it, as you can guess, it has to do with the spoiler alert is in the title here, Last Crossing of Lusitania.
Yeah, Lusitania.
Lusitania, of course, is a passenger ship, a British passenger ship, which was torpedoed by a German U-boat, U-20.
That Lusitania was Trump's second wife.
Well, that too.
Okay.
So, anyway, I don't want to think about her being torpedoed, though.
Something large and orange is coming at her.
But large? I don't know.
Well,
might be overcompensating.
That's true.
But so enough of Trump's penis talk, and back to the Lusitania, which like I said is a ship, and it was one of the incidents that if you you may remember from high school history or something as an inciting incident for America's entry into World War I. This happened in 1915 when it was sunk. But one of the things that was really interesting to me that I learned in this book, having sort of just a hazy knowledge of that period, was that I thought it was sort of like a Pearl Harbor type situation where that immediately led to the U.S. declaring war on Germany, but in fact it was actually 2 years later, after the sinking, that they ended up declaring war. And so it was in large part due to the unrestricted submarine warfare that Germany was practicing, but it wasn't the Lusitania by itself. That was just sort of one among many ships which were sunk.
That's interesting. Why were we just afraid to get engaged because of the commitment, and we just wanted to be more laissez-faire about the whole thing? I mean, you would think that certainly would incite the nation to take less than 2 years to jump in.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of criticism of the U.S. State Department at the time. Williams Jennings Bryan was the Secretary of State, and he was very much a pacifist. So he pushed for not getting involved, and there was a lot of I think a lot of just general hesitation of saying, like, we wanted to maintain the neutrality. Germany had some alliances with the relationship between the U.S. and Germany was still somewhat close at that point in time. So There was various political considerations as to why there wasn't an immediate declaration of war, but I think it's widely looked at in retrospect as probably foolish, and also probably cost many millions of lives, because World War One was a very deadly war, and had the U.S. intervened earlier, it could have turned the tide. Anyway, but the book is pretty fascinating. I love that period of history anyway, the turn of the century period, when the world is like on the verge of becoming the modern world, but it's not quite there yet. There's The Fifth Heart, that was the book I recommended back in episode 1, also takes place around that same time. So that's a period you'll probably see me coming back to. But the book is really interesting, the way it weaves all the different passenger stories together, and it tells like the German side, from using the captain's logs from the U-boat, and the spies that were intercepting German communications on London's side, who chose not to relay a lot of those communications to the Lusitania. And there's definitely some circumstantial evidence that Britain wanted the Lusitania, or not necessarily wanted to get torpedoed, but that they realized it could play into their hand in terms of helping pull the U.S. into the war if it did happen. So they weren't like trying to make it happen, but they weren't doing everything they could to stop it either. So that's pretty interesting. But anyway, just so it's a period of history, World War One, that a lot of people I think aren't super familiar with. And so if you want to know more, you want to look at it through the prism of this incident, which was, then this is a good place to start. And Larson's very, very good, very easy to read. He takes all this pretty extensive research and weaves it into, again, a narrative style that goes down easy. So check it out.
Sounds great. Sounds like a great birthday gift for my dad. He's got a birthday coming up, and I think you just did my shopping for me.
All right. Well, there you go.
One of the many services provided by the Pod Couple.
Yeah, many services, including cryptic prizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no shortage of those.
Promised, and certainly to be delivered.
Do you like cryptic prizes and unnecessary imagery of Donald Trump's genitalia? Hey, we're the podcast for you.
Well, I don't think that there's anywhere we can go but down from there. So, and I really wish I hadn't said going down after talking about Trump's genitalia, but but there you have it. Probably can't cut that part out. So I think that's enough for 1 week, and we will be back next week. Until then, signing off. This is the Pod Couple.
The Pod Couple. Oh, I fucked it up.
Let's try it again. This is
the couple. All right. All
right. We'll have to get better at this. We'll practice off the air.
See ya.
All right. See you next week.